Okay, well, let's just begin and people can keep joining as and when. So welcome everyone. This is the 2017 Mentoring Programme Mentee presentation. Just to check, can everyone hear me for now? Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes, and we've got a yes in the box. If at any point you can't hear, just let us know. Okay, so can we ask that you initially mute yourself, just in case there's any background noise, but do feel free to unmute yourself at any point to ask questions. You can type questions in the chat box, but we also welcome you interrupting us as and when. Just so you know, we will be recording this session for those who are unable to attend, and we're putting it on the STM website, and we'll make sure to send you the slides along after as well, just in case you want to review and also kind of keep for your own records. So introductions, we have today with us Jason Mitchell, who's Publishing Services Manager at Elsevier, and we also have Mandeep Kundi, who's a Learning and Development Manager at BMJ, and I'm Rachel Moriarty, and I'm Editor for Computer Science at Springer Nature. Okay, so to give you an idea of the topics we'll be covering today, here's our agenda. We're hoping to take around about 45 minutes today, obviously leaving time for questions as well. And yeah, I think we're good to go. So please let me hand over to Mandeep, who'll get us started.
Thanks, Rachel. So to begin, what we're going to do is just talk through the overall objectives of the STM Mentoring Program. So objective number one, to look at the benefits of mentoring to the wider publishing industry and what kind of benefits are associated with this, and Jason will be covering some of this off. To facilitate the creation of successful mentoring relationships between mentors and mentees, to provide guidance and support that ensures mentors and mentees benefit from the process that we've got in place, and to evaluate the effectiveness of the scheme and identify refinements for future delivery. So to start off with, let's talk about what is the difference between mentoring and coaching, because from my experience, there's always a great deal of confusion about mentoring and coaching and what that looks like. So to keep this nice and plain and simple, and there's lots of bullet points on that slide, I'm not going to talk through every single one of them, but in essence, the difference between mentoring and coaching is mentoring is a process where you have a relationship with somebody who is an expert in the area that you want to gain knowledge, skill, and behavior advancement. And what you would do is have a process where you go through that mentoring process in not so much of a formalized approach. It's pretty informal and relaxed in the whole process. And usually there isn't a need for objectives and outcomes, but it's desirable to have these, because if you do have them, then it creates for a better output. And we'll talk about outputs in more detail, but it's important to think about certain objectives. But in mentoring, it's not necessary, it's only a desirable thing. Whereas in coaching, the element of coaching is very different, because a coach will help to instigate a solution from the person who is being coached. In a coaching relationship, what a coach would do is help the individual to come up with their own solutions, their own responsive to the problems that the individual coachee is facing. In mentoring, there is this whole aspect of making sure that if I was mentoring Jason, that I was giving him expert advice around a solution, a problem, so that he'd take that away and try and replicate that in his own environment. So two very distinct differences between coaching and mentoring, and it's really important to remember those two when we're going through this process. Qualities of a good mentor, and qualities of a good mentee, sorry, and it's always really important to consider what are the qualities of a good mentee. To be positive, proactive, and willing to learn. As a mentee, I remember the first time I went through a mentee relationship, and the whole process can depend and hinge on how positive and proactive and willing I am to learn. So these three elements are really important from the mentee's perspective. To be honest, and the mentoring relationship depends on this massively as well. And if Jason was mentoring me and I wasn't being honest, in actual fact, the value that Jason is helping me with, it would be non-existent in essence. So to be open and honest is a real good quality from a mentee perspective. Sometimes from a mentee perspective, you can be quite apprehensive in trying to declare the fact that actually you're not very good at something that, something that is perceived you should be good at. But in this mentoring process, you need to remember that it's an environment where I can discuss in a safe situation what problems I'm facing. Have a realistic but ambitious goal for the mentoring relationship. Be realistic but challenge yourself as well, because if you don't challenge, there won't be any motivation to progress and create action. Be open to receiving constructive feedback and be respectful of the learning and guidance your mentor shares with you. Receiving feedback is really important because feedback can create this mobility within us. As a mentee, I want to go away and do something and create an action. And if I don't get that feedback and it's not constructive, then I can't go away and mobilize myself. So it's really important to have constructive feedback, not only from the mentor, but even as a mentee to be able to give feedback to my mentor and be respectful in the way we do that. And be aware of your optimal learning styles. And Rachel's going to touch on learning styles in a little while, but it's important to think about, how do I learn best? But remembering that learning and style of learning can change from time to time. Qualities of a good mentee, be positive, willing to learn, be honest. A mentoring relationship depends on this. So we've gone through all of this stuff, and be conscious of all of that in reality. How does it work? And this goes on to Jason.
Thank you, Monday. Okay, so how does the STM mentoring scheme work? To start with, the committee prepared the grounds for mentors and mentees to register their interest to take part. We had an excellent level of interest in the mentoring scheme, following on from the 2016 pilot scheme, with an even higher number of mentor and mentor applicants this time. The committee then met on at least 3 occasions to look through the background, the current roles, skill sets and mentoring goals from each registered application, and we carefully matched the mentees to that of the mentors. I think it's fair to say that this is the most detailed part of the process from our perspective, with the committee taking the most care and attention to it in terms of doing our utmost to get the matching right, so that not only do they complement each other as much as possible, there's also the possibility that the mentee is matched with the right person to confidently communicate with and stretch themselves. So bringing us up to speed where we are now, as mentees you should all have been introduced to your mentors and know who they are, and we're hoping you should have had at least 1, maybe 2 or more meetings or phone calls, and getting your mentorships underway at this point, and having those meetings, and taking those initial steps to achieving your goals. The last, so on the slide there, evaluation to ensure that the program is beneficial. I'll go into this in more detail later in the webinar, but it was an important part of the pilot scheme, getting feedback from mentors and mentees to consider those things that went well, that we want to continue into this year's scheme, but also to be aware of where we can improve STM on the committee, and with a view to supporting and facilitating the mentorships better. Okay, working contracts and ground rules. So just as a recap, so establishing the ground rules for your mentoring relationship is really important, and we'd recommend that this forms the basis of your initial meetings and or your calls with your mentor. So it's best to go over the basics at this point. What your objectives and why, what you want to achieve, and by the end of it, what knowledge or skill set you want to have accomplished. It would be good for you to talk through your stated goals with your mentor, and keep that dialogue going as your meetings progress. And also, establish what this isn't about. So obviously the mentors are not there to be on call, over 24/7 over the next 10 to 12 months, and neither are they expected to solve all of your problems. The mentoring relationship is instead about regular, perhaps monthly or more pre-arranged meetings to guide you on your path towards achieving your own goals through your own efforts. So the scheme is very much mentee-driven. It would be good to talk about broad topics earlier on, so touch upon those key themes and topics that you want to pursue, but obviously not in any great detail, especially in the initial call, but that will happen as you go along, and that will deepen and develop as you make more contact and you get to understand each other better. Setting expectations, obviously really important. So as mentioned, the first meeting will confirm your initial development objectives and immediate goals, agree those mutual expectations and help clarify both parties' roles from the outset, and do cover those issues of confidentiality, boundaries, style of mentoring, and how and when you decide to contact each other outside of arranged meetings. Now, confidentiality is of course a prerequisite on both sides in cross-industry mentoring. You may become cross-company mentoring. You may become privy to activities going on within other STM organisations. They may well be your competitor, but we ask that you retain that information only for the purposes of achieving your own mentoring goals. Trust really is a vital component of the mentoring relationship. Okay, common pitfalls. Now, it is rare, but mentoring relationships do not always work out as intended. It's worth recognising that not every mentorship will work out as you hope for all of the reasons that are laid out on this slide. And it may well be fairer to recognise that it is going awry and explore why that is really, and if necessary, it may be best to bring the mentoring relationship to an early end. Of course, needless to say, we hope this does not happen, and we on the STM committee would really like to be informed as early as possible so that we can try and make efforts to rectify the situation and make suggestions to put it back on course if that's possible, but we will of course respect the feelings of both parties if this does arise. Okay, so outcomes for successful mentoring partnerships. So for mentees, you're going to gain from your mentor's expertise and industry experience. That's that's the key cornerstone of the entire mentoring experience. We hope that you'll be open to receiving feedback, open and receptive to that, because it really does help people to develop. So that's something to keep in mind as you develop those mentoring relationships. And as Mandy mentioned earlier, just having those open and honest conversations will really help with that, and knowing that it's for the best of intentions. You'll develop as a mentee a sharper focus on what's needed to grow professionally to achieve your mentoring goal. You'll learn specific skills and knowledge if that's applicable to your particular goal. Certainly something that I would expect to happen, and which is a real benefit. And obviously you're broadening your network. You're working with a contact, possibly more than likely in a different company, and hopefully someone with friendly ear with which you may want to share your frustrations as well as successes. So there's lots of beneficial outcomes for taking part in mentoring. Okay, so outcomes for successful mentoring partnerships. Okay, I won't go through each one, but obviously it enhances professional development. You're taking the time, and you're committing yourself to go down this path, which if it's the mentoring goal has been carefully crafted and it's something you're genuinely interested in, and obviously would expect that to be the case, then you will develop yourself professionally. And obviously breaking down the silo mentality, no matter what that could be, it could be within your team, your own division, or even your own organisation. I think there's a real benefit from taking part in cross-company mentoring. You get a different background, you consider a different approach. So yeah, there's certainly benefits there for stepping out of your own comfort zone and liaising with somebody from a different company, a different background.
Thanks, Jason. So we're just going to cover off personal effectiveness through mentoring, and I'm just going to talk you through this four-step approach to personal effectiveness. And one of the things that we always think about when we are going through a mentoring process or relationship is about the creation of action as a result of my mentoring program. So I'm going to put this into context and use Jason as an example of somebody who might be mentoring me. So step one, explore more and discover more about myself. And in my conversation with Jason, we may be going through a conversation about discovering a little bit more about myself, where Jason may well be giving me some constructive feedback about whether what I'm thinking about is appropriate or not. Step two is learning how to recognize and appreciate differences around my situation, circumstances, the people I work with, because I may well be talking to Jason about a problem that I have in my work environment and how do I overcome this. Now, having understood a little bit about myself in step one, discovering more, then I learn how to recognize and appreciate differences in the environment that I'm in. And then step three is about adapting and learning how to adapt and interact more effectively in that given situation that I'm relating to when I'm having my mentoring session with Jason. And step four is to go away from my mentoring session and take action and put my learning from the session I've had with Jason into practice. Because if I don't do that bit, then I may as well not have had the discussion with Jason, because it's the action at the end of the program, at the end of the mentoring session, that creates the difference in what I am trying to solve as an individual in my working environment. So a very simple personal effectiveness process there, step one straight through to step four, about simply knowing more, understanding more, and understanding how I can make a better or different approach in that given situation. So I'm going to move on and let Rachel come back into on this, I think. Yes, Rachel?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so what happens next? So arrange your first meeting if you haven't already done so. As we said, we're hoping by this stage you at least have had one meeting. Don't worry if you haven't, but we would really recommend that you make one as soon as possible, and let us know if for any reason there's delays in organising this meeting, and we can help support you. Okay. So we would advise, by no means are we making this mandatory, but it might be worth having a look at doing a learning style questionnaire, just to have if you don't already, a lot of people by this point in their career might already have an idea of how they prefer to learn. But if you haven't, or you'd like to refresh yourself, or maybe take into account changes perhaps in your circumstances, you might want to consider doing the questionnaire again. We have provided a link to one particular questionnaire at the end of this presentation, which we'll send round in the coming week or so, and we'll also put this webinar online as well. And be sure to share the outcome with your mentor, just so that they can understand what your preferred learning style is and work with you on that. Be sure to let your team and your line manager know that you're involved in the program, basically so you can, if necessary, you can have their support, but also so they know that you're taking part of it in case it requires any, not necessarily time off, but calls during work hours or anything along those lines.
Rachel, sorry, just want to mention on the learning styles from mentee perspective, mentees just need to be conscious that if you do use a learning styles questionnaire, that is just an identification of your learning style at that time in the situation, circumstance, or in that time in your life. Now, if you do the learning styles questionnaire maybe even 3 months later, and the situation around you has changed, then your learning styles outputs would look very different. So it's important not to be kind of fixated on the outputs from the learning style, but use it as a guide.
Absolutely. You know, I've done kind of tests in the past where my 16-year-old self would have learned a certain way, my 20-year-old self something else, and who I am now. So this is very much just a recommendation, but there is no pressure from our side, and certainly won't be any pressure from your mentor's side. It's just in case you're interested. And yeah, as Mandy says, it's not gospel. Okay, and yes, so we have lots of resources and handy hints to help you, which we'll cover in the following slides. If you haven't already, we do recommend, but as we said, it's desirable but not essential, to agree objectives and outcomes with your mentor, along with a provisional timeline for the relationship. We have suggested that you take this year, 2017, you know, we're looking to evaluate towards, you know, kind of November, December time, and certainly contact us if you have any questions. Our contact details will be at the end of the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. So as I mentioned earlier, we did a survey at the end of the pilot scheme in 2016, and we had lots of really useful feedback for us to consider. So we kind of bracketed some of the feedback, you know, just to give an insight to this year's participants to hopefully make the best of the opportunity. So the first one there, prepare for the meeting, is a really good tip for getting the most out of your mentoring meetings and calls. You know, I think if you can, have some kind of agenda for the next meeting, and you know, then there's no surprises for both parties. So that person there in the second bullet point, we chat once a month on topics that he brings to the table and emails me in advance of meetings, which I think is good courtesy and good practice, and will help the mentor to prepare accordingly. Agreeing the meeting structure is really important, although in that particular case it wasn't entirely successful. It said my mentor and I got along really, really well, but without a formal structure in place, and with both of us being very busy, it just didn't take off, which is regrettable, and hopefully this doesn't happen with anyone this year. So again, it's just, you know, setting up those meetings, setting the time aside, and you know, the effort that you put in will definitely reap rewards.
And I think, Jason, this is about the commitment part, isn't it? We were talking earlier on about, you know, how important it is for mentee and mentor to commit to the relationship and say, okay, if we've scheduled 10 sessions, let's make sure those happen, rather than, you know, cancelling them at the end moment. So I think this level of commitment is really important.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think it also shows respect as well to your mentor as well, that you're taking it seriously. And enjoy the process. You know, it's really important for us on the STM committee that, you know, you not only learn, but you actually enjoy the experience of being mentored. So you know, we hope this year that people will also enjoy the process and enjoy learning and developing new skills.
And Jason, you were a mentee, weren't you, as well? So when you were in your mentoring relationship with your mentor, what kind of conversation did you have in regards to talking about, actually, this is helping me?
Yeah, well, my mentor was very upfront in terms of at the end of, well, at the beginning of each meeting, we'd talk about the agenda for what we would talk about, and then we'd have a discussion that was prepared in advance, a topic in advance. But he would also check in and make sure that I was understanding, you know, where he was coming from and why we were touching upon certain aspects. And I was very lucky, actually. I had a mentor who's very relatable, and we had a very open and honest sort of working relationship. So it became easier, shall we say, as time went on, for me to perhaps ask more questions as I got more confident with my mentor. became more engaging and easier to do that kind of checking in with each other that we're on the right track, basically. Okay, so Rachel, I'm going to pass over to you just to remind people of the support available.
Thank you. So as we said before, making sure your line managers are involved or at least aware of that you're doing the mentoring scheme is really important. So check that it wouldn't be unexpected for your line manager to check in on how the relationship is going, but they should not be looking for any details. It's a confidential relationship between you and your mentor. So you can stick to that. There's no reason why your line manager needs to know anything more than either it's going well or it's going not so well. Line manager will also need to acknowledge that mentoring relationships are part of your development, and the same goes for the mentor side as well. A lot of our mentors need to check in with their own line managers, and a lot of the mentors will have been mentees at some point themselves, so they'll understand the benefits of the process. HR departments are usually very supportive as well. Approaching them for guidance is a really good option. They might even have specific documentation for how mentoring works within your own company that might be of use to you. On the next slide, we'll also show you some external resources that will provide advice and kind of FAQs for the mentees. So the first link is our contact details, and we will send these slides around so you can contact us. Here again is a link to just one learning style questionnaire. There's many, but it's the one that we're familiar with. We've also got a comprehensive mentoring guidance document, which should answer most of your questions, but if it doesn't, please do contact us. And the last thing is just a bit of further reading recommended by kind of Claudia Filsinger. It's from the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. It's a book called Everyone Needs a Mentor, and it's worth a read if you're wanting kind of more information that you might not find on the guidance document. But like I said, please do contact us. Some useful social media links. We've got our Twitter, our LinkedIn, our Facebook, so you can kind of find out what we're doing there, and obviously contact us any questions on those channels as well. And that's us complete. So we'd really love any questions that you have. You're welcome to type them in the chat box or unmute yourself and ask them directly. Okay, I'm going to take that as I think everyone's fine at the moment, or if you prefer to contact us directly rather than raising questions in front of the group, that's fine as well. Like I said, we're going to put this webinar online should you wish to watch it again, and we'll also send round the PowerPoint as well. So if there aren't any questions, we'll call that a day, and I would like to thank you all very much for joining us.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.